Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day, long before we had a website, or listeners, or taste, or class. We called ourselves Movies We Like, which was, with the benefit of hindsight, A terrible name.
But before we send you through the window of time to gaze your earballs on movie podcast history, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you decide to become a regular listener of this show and you're interested in supporting our ongoing work on our other series like The Film Board or The Speakeasy and Trailer Rewind, please consider a regular donation to us through our Patreon page at patreon.com/thenextreel.
All the contributors are invited to join us in our Slack channel, where we have tons of fun, and they are entered to win our regular contests, guest spots on this very show, all sorts of good stuff.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention. We hope you enjoy the show. I do need to tell you, I feel like I need to report on my birthday weekend extravaganza.
Oh, yes. We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
How did it go?
Okay, so if you recall, it was my birthday. I took the day off to go see movies, and I chose to see Immortals. By what's his name? Tarsem Singh, and then In Time.
Right. By Andrew Niccol.
I was not keen on Immortals. Really, I was not keen on it on many levels.
Okay.
But the thing that I found so hard to get past was it just looked cheap.
Oh, interesting.
It just looked cheap. And what really struck me was when they would switch to Mount Olympus, and all of the gods would be sitting there in their bikinis, and they would be, looking down on Earth, and you could see the visible mask tracing around the CG sets. The CG sets looked like something from the news sets that I used to work on, in 1998. That, like, oh my goodness, we can do a CG green screen set. This was stuff that we would see at CES and at RTNDA, and this was like it looked like first generation bitmap texture mapping. And I just felt like that was cheap. It was cheap in every way that 300 was not.
Interesting.
And so I had a really hard time. It's like if you read, I know you teach, and so I teach as well, and I read these batches of papers that I get sometimes from folks, and if they are not well edited, right? If you can't read them, then you never actually get to the point of being able to have a conversation about substance.
Sure.
And I found myself so distracted by just the look of Immortals that I really had a hard time even getting into the film. I found myself just sort of shrugging my shoulders at the end, saying, "No, I probably should have seen something else." What really bummed me out, I was a huge fan of the cartoon when I was a kid, the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh, sure,
that adaptation, and they had the Eprian bow in Dungeons and Dragons, the energy bow.
Yeah, I don't think it was quite the same bow.
No, but it was that whole thing. Obviously, it was.
I had kind of forgotten about that.
Inspired by the sort of paladin bow, and I that's like a bow and arrow kind of thing I fantasize about, and I was totally let down by that. Like, they just hardly even used it. I mean, there's that one dramatic long shot where he shoots 4 times and knocks down those 4 guards, and that's something. But I just found myself totally underwhelmed. I wanted more Labyrinth. And the Matador, Minotaur. I mean the Matador. The Matador was totally out of context.
Olé!
That was totally inappropriate. No, I liked I liked that they didn't make him the mythical monster that he was. He was just a horrifically disfigured giant. With the helmet,
crazy head.
That was.
I really liked that, actually. I thought that was really a unique spin on it. And then how at the end they kind of you have this statue of the fight, which is just a man with the bull's head, which
is kind of how it's been passed down. I thought that was an interesting way to look at how a myth gets created.
That was right. That's exactly right. And that was going to be my comment. I'm glad you said that, because I was so bitter about the rest of the film that I felt like I'm not giving that twist much credit, because that's exactly right. That's how a myth gets created. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
I like the look of it. I mean, I thought personally, it like the production design, regardless of whether the CG was perfect or not, I thought it had a very unique palette across the board, and the costumes, like everything, just looked really interesting. I did find it not necessarily effective as far as like, if I were going into battle, would I wear an evil bunny rabbit helmet? I don't know. But I thought they looked cool.
And you got to ask yourself, is Mickey Rourke, is that dude blessed or cursed at this point in his career?
Yeah, right.
I'm leaning toward blessed, and then you see him in that getup. I don't know. Okay, so In Time. Oh, well, let me say about Immortals. Here's the problem with Immortals. They made such a big deal about the fact that it was from the producers of 300 that I came home after it and I turned on 300, and there is no substantive comparison that you can make between the two films.
Yeah,
there's no between the just the general production design, the execution of the production design is not of the same caliber.
Well, I think what people look for is just, when they say 300, the average person may just be thinking, oh, big fight scenes, rippling abs, lots of half-naked people, and those, two-dimensional, fight scenes where you ramp up and down with your speed. Yeah. As far as like slow-mo fighting and all of that. I mean,
but even that, I was expecting some full-on, what is it? The camera, oh, see, it escapes me. The Viper, is it the Viper that's the 1,000 frames a second?
It's one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting more of that. I was expecting more of that, and there wasn't as much of that. I mean, it was just run of the mill. I mean, it just felt like a little bit more. I expected 300. I didn't get that. That was my problem. So I mean, we could talk about that all night long. In Time was for my day, it was both better and far worse. I'm so into the concept of that film. Like, I was in it. I think it's so cool. The whole concept, I buy it. I buy it as a metaphor for the classism that is going on in this country, and I buy it. I totally buy it. And the first act and the third act, I could totally buy it. And the second act, it came right off the rails. Had no idea what the movie was about in the whole thing. I mean, there's that transition for the protagonist from the ghetto to, to the highbrow kind of area. It was like there was that 15-minute sequence of driving through gates that led to 45 minutes of, I don't know what I saw. It was like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, back to back, very special episodes. And then it came back to the movie and it was Robin Hood again.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just, I want to see that movie again, and I want to see a second draft.
I think, because I feel the same about it. I think that it's such an amazing concept. I wish that it hit it out of the park a little more. And I think I feel that way with, I don't think I've seen all of Andrew Niccol' films, but Gattaca I also felt that way about. I think it's just one of the most fascinating sci-fi movies made. But still, it's one that I just, sometimes when I watch it, I'm just like, God, there's something not quite there with the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one, I think you're right. I think, and maybe I hadn't really thought about it too much, but now that you mention it, when he gets to the land of the rich and he meets the girl, for me, I just felt like she kind of bogged it down for me.
Yeah. This was Amanda Seyfried.
Amanda Seyfried's character, whatever her name was. I felt the most powerful moment, oddly for me, was toward the beginning with his mother.
Yeah, the run.
Yeah,
the run.
That was one of the most amazing moments, and to have it end that way, I was just like, that was a moment. I mean, it was just a fantastic moment in the film.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It really set it up well.
Yeah. It felt like, it felt very episodic. Like this really was 3 back-to-back half-hour, episodes of something. And the second one was not that great. I like how they wrapped it up at the end. The run at the end, mirroring the run at the beginning with his mother was nice. I like that they end up at, Robin Banks. I like the Bonnie and Clyde kind of Robin Hood twist. I like that.
Yeah.
That felt good to me. I just felt like it was one of those, I just wanted more, and I was disappointed as a result. So on the day, I give it a solid 3 stars. I really buoyed by the sci-fi concept of In Time. That's my day.
Yeah.
3 stars because In Time had a good thing. It pulls up Immortals.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that worked.
Yeah, that was good. So let's talk about Charlie Kaufman, can we?
Yeah, let's talk about Charlie Kaufman, and while we're at it, we can throw in Donald Kaufman as well.
What's the deal with that guy? Donald Kaufman.
She hates me. She's disappointed. I could see it in her eyes when we met. I've got to stop sweating. Oh, she looked at my hairline. She thinks I'm bald. She's thinking I would never in a million years sleep with this guy.
We think you're great.
Oh, thanks. Wow, that's nice to hear. To begin, coffee would help me think. Coffee and a muffin. I'm going up to Santa Barbara this Saturday, and I was wondering.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
So I'll just be right back with your pie then.
Drum roll, please. I'm gonna be a screenwriter, like you.
I'm putting in a chase sequence. So the killer flees on horseback, cops after them on a motorcycle. And it's like a battle between motors and horses, like technology versus horse.
Okay, so we're talking about Adaptation.
Adaptation from 2002.
Walk us through the specifics of Adaptation.
Of the plot is basically takes place in the real world for the most part. Although I guess you could say it's an imagined version of the real world that Charlie Kaufman came up with in his struggle to figure out how to adapt this novel, The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean. He couldn't figure he was in real life, he was hired to adapt this book and couldn't figure out how to adapt it because it's kind of one of those not really adaptable books. He, instead of trying to adapt it, he decided he was going to write the script about him trying to adapt it. Which, when you hear that, it sounds pretty outlandish. And, he's even said that he was afraid to tell anybody what he was doing, so he just did it because he knew that if he told them that this was his idea, that they would have just immediately shot it down. So he went and did it and turned it in, and obviously everybody loved it. So here's this story about Charlie Kaufman trying to adapt The Orchid Thief with now his twin brother Donald living in his house and driving him mad, and who on the way decides he also wants to become a screenwriter and is the sort of guy that you just don't want writing screenplays because they're the sort that end up as the completely nonsensical action thrillers that we all end up seeing trailers for time after time. So
yeah.
So that's a good start of the plot. It's I guess from there, I mean, we do meet Susan Orlean, the character who wrote the book, and follow her as she's researching the book. It jumps around a lot in time. So we jump back 3 years earlier when Susan Orlean meets her subject, John LaRoche, down in Florida, as he's trying to find this very elusive orchid called the ghost orchid down in the some swamp in Florida, the Frakahatchee or something. Swamp. I don't remember what it's called.
You do great service to the tribal leaders of the Frakahatchee.
What is it? It's something like that.
I don't know. I got it.
Anyway,
it'll get there.
So they go to the so in this version of Susan meeting John LaRoche, she kind of falls for him in this way. LaRoche introduces her to this drug that he creates from the ghost orchid. They crush it down and make this drug that the Seminoles have as some ancient tribal drug that they extract from the flower. And they start taking this drug, and they totally fall for each other. She starts posing naked on his porn site, and just I mean it's completely outlandish, and it's just brilliant.
That's okay. All right, go ahead. Finish your sentence.
Well, I was just going to say, in the meantime, Charlie's brother Donald, who has now decided to become a screenwriter and does much better mingling with the Hollywood crowd than Charlie does, is working on this script called The Three, about these three people: a cop, a killer, and a woman. The killer kidnaps the woman, and the cops after them. But in reality, they're all the same person. It's just completely ridiculous story. And the Charlie is so stuck with this story that he gets his brother to help him because he feels that maybe his brother will be able to help him out. And there's a visit with Robert McKee, the world-renowned screenwriting expert who speaks around the world. And gosh, what else? I mean, it's kind of a tricky one to talk about.
It's extremely difficult. I'm like hearing you spin. Kind of,
yeah, I am kind of spinning because I'm like, what really would I say next?
Well, because okay. So there are two real concrete, I think, timelines going on, right? I mean, there's the 3 years prior and the present day.
Yes.
Right. I mean, those are our functional kind of parallel timelines in terms of the story.
Right. The 3 years ago timeline, that's when Susan Orlean is researching her book, meets John LaRoche, falls for him, starts doing the drugs. Susan Orlean is a person who's, not happy with her life, and through John LaRoche, she's finds somebody who is excited about, who has a passion and follows it.
Yeah.
She feels that she's never done that, and so kind of does that through him.
One of the things that is so fascinating to me about this movie, I remember it. I had only seen it a couple of times, a long time ago when it first came out, right? And because it came out, we've already said when it came out, right? When did it come? It was 2002?
2002. Yeah.
All right, so it came out in 2002. I remember seeing it right when it came out, and I saw it again sort of, shortly after, but I haven't seen it in years. And so I'm watching it again. I realized that there's so much of this. I'm really interested in your perspective on this question. There's so many turns in this movie that reek of writer's block exercise, and knowing that Charlie Kaufman was dealing with such staggering writer's block that took him years to actually get through the script that he was contracted to write. Mm-hmm. It just makes you think, okay, all right, now so he the third act is just peppered with these unbelievable twists that are written into the script that to get the characters moving out of whatever unbelievable twist that they happen to be in. From the point where Donald gets shot, I think Donald gets shot. There's the car accident. There's the Chris Cooper's character getting eaten by an alligator. I mean, those things happen one after another, and you just sit there watching. How did this slip by, and how is he possibly getting me to enjoy this? Like, how is he able to make this anything but camp? And yet, I find myself riveted by it. Like it's absurdist theater that I like, and I'm curious how would you have graded this screenplay if you were grading a student who turned this into you?
Well, that's a tricky question. It's hard to say, but if you it's one of those screenplays where if you read it wrong or you're not in the right mindset, it's entirely likely that you may not catch what he's doing, and you may look at it and go, "Oh, it's just, so cliche. It's all the cliche things happening in this story." But when you see what he's really doing, and when I've talked to people who really just didn't like this movie because they felt the ending was just so cliche. I'm just not sure if they really got it, or maybe they did get it, but they felt that it was too self-referential. I'm not quite sure what didn't click for them. But for me, what happens is he uses the clichés and all of the stuff that you see happening in the third act of a film. The car chases, the dragging them out to the swamp to kill them, the chase through the swamp, the reconciliation scene, one, like you were saying, it's one after the other. One gets shot, the self-sacrifice, all of that stuff that just keeps happening and over and over and over again. It kind of it works really well because right from the beginning, he's telling you that that's not what he wants to do. And then through his character, I think what changes it for me is when his character sits down and chats with Robert McKee in the film, played by Brian Cox.
Brilliant.
The actor. Yeah,
Brilliant.
It was just so perfect. Robert McKee, spells it out right there. He says, this is, you can't make that movie. I mean, he very specifically says, why would I want to see that movie? Why would I want to see it? It's just, it's not something that people would want to see. And, when they're sitting down in the bar afterward, he says, you just wow them in the end. Whatever it is that you need to do, just make sure you wow them in the end. And it is so self-referential, and it is just pointing a great big finger at what you're about to see.
Yeah.
But because he's pointing that finger, and because it's the writer pointing that finger, and because they don't play it up like all cutesy, like, oh, look at us, look at us doing exactly what we, we're just saying we shouldn't do, it ends up working really well.
Yeah, I think he does. But here's the sort of corollary question that goes with that. Do you think Kaufman would have been able to make this movie if he hadn't already done Malkovich?
No. I don't think he... well, it's very likely that he wouldn't even have been offered the chance. If you're saying he was offered the chance as kind of an unknown, or as somebody who's kind of come from TV, because
he did. He came from TV in a weird way. I mean, the Dana Carvey show.
He did a lot of
weird,
strange.
But it was all weird stuff that feels to me like he is making movies that are out of his God oeuvre, right? Like,
right.
Like he's making movies that were not personal to him. He was writing scripts that were not personal. It was sketch comedy. I mean, I know people who celebrate multiple sort of genre, and that's fine. But but the trick here is that he was would he have been able to get this movie made, to participate in this movie the way he did, if Malkovich hadn't been the movie that it was? Right? I mean,
I don't think so. I don't think people would have been able to say, oh, we get it because of who you are and what you've done. I don't think there would have been the full understanding of it. I think in order for this movie to have been made the way that it was made, it had to be him, and it had to be after being John Malkovich.
That's an interesting contrast to some of the other movies we've talked about, right? Where you end up with, the other movies we've talked about, right? Raiders, where every one of those movies had a whole bunch of different people come in and out, working on the script.
Right.
And this is a movie that, like it or not, where it succeeds because it is a singular vision from a guy who is a singular visionary.
Yeah.
No, I don't. This is not a project that I could ever envision somebody collaborating on with him.
No, except for
Donald, which we have to say in quotes. What's the deal with Donald?
I think what is great about Donald is it's the first completely fictional character that's been nominated for an Academy Award.
That's so brilliant.
I just love that. I think it's just so genius.
And credited as the co-screenwriter, and I mean that's he's taken on. I wonder if he has like a social security number, and
it was a really it's like, how does the WGA go about paying him for that? Yeah. It's a really interesting way to create multiple sides of a character, of the Charlie Kaufman character, and writing this, I can see him, struggling with, how am I going to get across this internal battle I have with wanting to remain true to the book, but also this outsider's perspective of wanting to look at what typically would become of the book if anyone else was to try to adapt it.
Yeah. There are a couple of crazy aha moments in this movie for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first one is when he actually hits his first breakthrough, where and this is this is going to seem like a non sequitur, but I'm going to come back. I promise I'm going to come back to Donald, where he hits his first aha moment, where that the movie he's writing, he doesn't know how to get there, and you kind of are vaguely aware that the story that he's about to tell is a story that's going to loop back on itself, and he has that conversation with Donald about the snake eating its own tail,
right?
And he picks up his recorder and he starts talking into it, and he starts scripting as he's talking what he's saying into the recorder. Does that make sense? Right? That sequence, that late night cold sweat sequence, where you become a participant in the story that he's telling by virtue of the fact that he's telling it about the movie that you're watching,
right,
was one of those moments that you sit up and say, I just got punched, right? That was the first one. But the second one is how it deals with this issue of sort of multiple personality syndrome in the creative process.
Yeah,
right?
Which is, very valid.
Crazy. But what's weirdest about it is that it starts out feeling like, when you first meet Donald, he comes back into his house after he's having this conversation with Donald. I actually thought that there were multiple hymns in the house with him. Like, as he changes rooms, Donald's sort of always there.
Oh, interesting.
And it was an interesting sort of bit of stagecraft where you end up kind of, he crosses into one room and down a hall, and there's Donald, and Donald's in another room, and he's having this conversation. And every time he goes into another room, it's like another version of him is having that conversation. I remember being totally bought in to the fact that this was a multiple personality play.
Right.
And so that second aha moment is when you realize it's not. That at some point, Donald became a real character that can be shot, right? It's when they get on a plane and go to New York and then go down to Florida. That was, I didn't know if I should be let down, that it wasn't actually going to sort of resolve the multiple personality bit,
right,
or if I should really be celebrating the fact that it does. That from Kaufman's perspective, you have this character that is invented to help move through this process of creation. And at the end, when it's over, you kill him because you don't need him anymore. And I can totally see that. Like, this poor character, credited as a screenwriter of the movie, part of that, of his personality, got axed because he wasn't needed.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
It is. It really is. Because you're right. It could have very easily turned into an ending like Fight Club, where you get to.
Are you saying that like with any sort of disdain?
No, not at all. I'm saying that what I mean though is, in Fight Club, you get to the end and you realize, oh, this is the multiple personality. This is his other half.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what you're saying is like, that could have very easily been kind of the direction that you went toward the end of this, where all of a sudden you realize, oh, Donald was never there. It was always Charlie.
Where the other half is a literal other half or a spiritual other half.
Right.
In this case, it was a literal other half.
Yeah, right, exactly. Twins.
Yeah.
Brilliantly played by Nicolas Cage.
You think?
Yeah. You don't think
where do you stand on Nicolas Cage? I mean, just generally.
You know, I like him. He makes a lot of really crappy movies, but I like him.
Did you like Next? Did you like him in Next?
You know, Next was an interesting movie, and I actually talked to the writer of Next. I don't know if it...
That's awkward.
Did you see Next?
Yes, I saw Next. God.
You know, I did not like it. I don't know if I'd say I liked it, but I didn't not like it. The thing that I found really interesting about that movie, since we've gone...
Yeah, I'm sorry I did that, but now I'm interested.
Is the entire nuclear threat that the story is building toward. You know, somebody's going to detonate this bomb in L.A. or whatever it is. Almost becomes a MacGuffin where that it doesn't really matter if that really ends up happening or not. The story ends up being about just, you know, him trying to, I can't even remember what he's trying to do, stop somebody on the boat. The bomb, you know, I think, as I recall, the bomb ends up happening regardless. Gosh, it tells you how well I remember that film.
I was going to be my comment. Well done, Next.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not that memorable, but
all right. So
I didn't hate it. Anyway.
What about what's the new one? Drive. Don't Drive Angry. Drive Angry.
Was it? Yeah, Drive Angry. I skipped that one. I mean,
do you know why? Because it was terrible. It was a terrible film.
He makes a lot of really bad films.
God, he makes terrible movies. But ever since Moonstruck, I think there are, maybe I can count them on one hand, the number of movies that I really liked that he's in it. This is one of them. I do. I think he did a great job in this movie, and it what is a largely, you know, an extremely challenging role playing twins. And,
you know,
and playing them subtly.
Tom Hanks was originally going to play that role, or the two roles.
Yeah. You
know, as a Tom Hanks fan as I am, I never knew that until I started looking at this. I did my research on this one. I had no idea. What a trip it would have been to have Tom Hanks in this film. This is one of those cases where I think Nicolas Cage was the right man for the job. I really I feel he embodied that awkwardness and like the kind of that self-hate that Charlie Kaufman had, kind of that constant banter with yourself in your head.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage just does that so well.
Nicolas Cage, there's another actor that I'm thinking of that I would have loved to see in this movie, and it's gonna make me crazy. What was the movie, the wine movie that I love so much?
The wine movie, Sideways?
Sideways.
Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti. This was a Paul Giamatti movie to me, and in fact, when I think about it, when I think about this movie, even now as we're talking about it, I picture Paul Giamatti playing that role.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't see him doing it.
Oh man. Okay, but I wanted to get to Chris Cooper.
Yeah, who won an Oscar for this film. I mean, genius performance. There's so much going on with John LaRoche. I was blown away by what he did with it. Blown away. Yeah.
It was it was a standout performance to the for me that ended up overshadowing Meryl Streep, who is always fantastic.
But is one of, I mean, I think this is just a genius performance that has so much humor in it that I don't know if she does that much stuff that has as much humor in it.
No, she doesn't. It's very different for her. For her, and see, we're already sidetracked again. But for Meryl Streep's character, what I like so much about her is that, she is it's this middle-aged woman who is sort of rediscovering her own sort of youthful sexuality through this crazy rabbit hole. Right. This is for her. This is the Alice in Wonderland story.
Yeah.
Very.
Right.
That's her storyline.
Yeah.
And how that interacts with really Chris Cooper's kind of Mad Hatter is so beautifully done.
Yeah.
Chris Cooper. The arc for Chris Cooper is kind of fascinating for me, right? Because they first of all they build him up as this. They dress him as someone who is, not to be taken seriously. Missing 4 teeth, he refuses to get them fixed. Ends up, the way he speaks, the way he looks, the car he drives. I mean, everything about him is meant not to take seriously.
The way he thinks of himself and talks about himself.
Right, right. The way he jumps from business to business, and one day he's in flowers, the next day he's in porn. Yeah. And it all leads up to sort of that moment when they're wandering the swamp together, and she starts to discover, I think the way I read it, that she starts to sort of become aware that he is full of it. Yeah. That he's gotten them lost together. And then they happen to stumble on the orchid.
Right.
What is that moment for you? Is that a moment that moment when she looks back and she says, it's a flower?
It's just a flower. Yeah.
What does that moment for you represent in the film? Like, what is that an important moment?
Yeah, it's a big moment, for a character at that point who has been so set on finding this way to follow this passion that John LaRoche exhibits. She's in pursuit of this ghost orchid flower, and through the process of getting lost and circling the swamp for into the evening, only to stumble upon it. It's almost like it makes her realize that, I guess to a certain extent, she kind of sees from his perspective how, he talks about, he latches on to something that he's passionate about. And then all of a sudden he just isn't interested in it anymore. He moves on to something else that he's passionate about, And for her, it's that she has that moment of realization where, there's nothing passionate about this pursuit of this flower. All we're doing is just looking for a flower in a swamp, so what? There it is. It's a flower. It's a moment where she kind of realizes that pursuing a passion isn't necessarily going to be the answer to your life. It's not going to be the thing that kind of clues you into the answers of the universe. It's a moment.
Well, right. And because when you look at her and you watch her path to that moment, she was always struggling to keep up. Right. Or to catch up, I should say. Like it felt very much like she was in a rush to kind of get up to where he was. Mm-hmm. And when she realized it was just a flower, it was that awakening to the fact that it wasn't a race, that there was no race. Like that was her journey of discovery to me.
Yeah. And everyone is going to have to find their own path to finding the passion in their own lives. She's trying to latch on to this other person's passion. And at that moment, she realizes that that's not the answer for her. She has to find her own path. She can't live vicariously through somebody else who's passionate.
We haven't talked, I think, at length, maybe enough, about the idea of the writer writing himself into the script.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and not just writing himself into the script, but writing himself into the script, writing himself into the script.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a very self-referential loop. You said when he starts dictating into his microphone, literally, as he's dictating it, we jump back almost to the beginning of the film and start seeing the film being recreated.
Right.
Even jumping back farther to the beginning of time as we see, the cosmos bringing, all the forces together to create Earth. I mean,
that was maybe a little heavy-handed. I don't know.
I don't think so. I just loved it.
You and Jerry Aronson.
Jerry.
I think that was a bit that was you know what it reeked to me of oh man, we record these things so late at night. I'm just not on my game. Hold on.
It's later for me, bucko.
That's only because Oregon is one of the backwards states that does the daylight saving. I hate daylight savings. Hunter Thompson, right?
Mm-hmm.
This in so many ways is inspired by Hunter Thompson, and the Great Shark Hunt and the whole sort of Gonzo gestalt of being a media personality that injects himself into the story. It takes not just an observational but an active role.
Sure.
In the story, and that's what is so jarring to me about what Kaufman did, is that not only did he, he took a work of fiction. He was hired to adapt a work of fiction that exists, right?
Right.
I mean, I could go read this book, The Orchid Thief, by Susan Orlean, right? She's those people are real.
Right. John LaRoche, they're all real.
They're all real people. And then he gets so screwed over in his own head by this process that he writes himself in and starts talking about the process of writing. And so then we get into the loop. But at that point, we're still documenting the real process of writing this, of adapting this script and how hard it is. Right. And then he fictionalizes it.
Yep.
The third act didn't happen.
Well, even into the second act. I mean, I don't think, I think there's a lot going on that didn't really happen.
Wholly fictionalized.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I don't know why I'm so hung up on this, and I don't know why this is an issue, but it just feels to me like this is a movie that has somehow is a victim of the Mad Hatter sort of personality disorder. And I wonder who, I just kept thinking, what does Susan Orlean think of this movie? Like, does she feel at all victimized by the fact that her movie never got made?
Well, it's funny. I actually just watched a video of her.
There I am ill prepared.
Somebody asked about that and what she thought of it. It's actually on Charlie Kaufman's website, beingcharliekaufman.com. She was thrilled at the idea that Hollywood wanted to try to adapt her book, even though, she acknowledged right there. She's just like, I'm not quite sure how you're going to do it. I mean, I don't know if you're going to have to put car chases into it or what, but she said, but that's your problem. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just get paid for it. And then when she got the script, she's just like, well, I can't let you make this. I mean, I appear on a porn site, there's like all these things. She's just like, what are people going to think of me? And so she was absolutely terrified of this movie getting made. And it took them, some conversations to talk about what they were trying to do with it. And yes, we're taking liberty with who you are, but people are, hopefully going to be smart enough to catch on that it's not really, based on a true story. This isn't really how everything went down. And, I think she ended up getting it. And from her interviews, she sounded like, nobody ever actually started believing that she appeared on porn sites, and people still respected her as a writer. And she I think that she found that there is that separation between the movie world of her life and her real life, and was fine with it.
I just made the connection that I go through fits and starts of watching Colbert, the Colbert Report, and I just made the connection that she wrote the Rin Tin Tin book.
I had no idea.
She was just on Colbert just last month, doing a book tour on the Rin Tin Tin dog. She did the biographical history of the dog actor, actor Rin Tin Tin. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. She also wrote the article that the Surfer Girl movie Blue Crush was based on.
Oh, you're kidding. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Life's a swell.
Adaptation. Yeah.
Okay. I also have to imagine that if somebody comes to you and says, not only have we taken your script, we've totally bastardized it, but we're going to make it okay. Do you know how? Because of Meryl Streep. You are going to be immortalized by Meryl Streep.
Right.
Think about that.
That, I think, is, makes you feel pretty good. I don't know what I would think if someone said Meryl Streep is going to play me in a movie. I might think it was a little strange.
No, you get Paul Giamatti.
Knowing Meryl Streep, she could pull it off pretty well.
I can't believe you're not going to say anything about Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti, I'm not even going to go there.
No, it was a thing. I was expecting a thing, but you didn't.
I was
stuck.
I was stuck on Meryl Streep. What can I say?
I can imagine. Meryl Streep, she's a classy lady.
She's the Iron Lady. You know what I always think of with Paul Giamatti?
What?
I always think of the end credits of the Howard Stern movie that came out in the late 90s. Paul Giamatti was in that. He played his boss when he was at NBC, I believe, something like that. And it's the end credits. You just have Paul Giamatti like being interviewed, standing there on a street corner, and he's just so pissed off at Howard Stern's success, and he's just going off. And as he's going off, this jackhammer of some like road work going on around the corner or something just keeps going off, and you can't hear anything that he says. And it was just so funny. I don't know why that's what I always picture when I think of Paul Giamatti, but that will permanently be him in my head.
This was Private Parts, right? That was the movie?
Yes, thank you. I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah. No, he's pretty good, Paul Giamatti.
Oh, I love him.
He's on my list of people who we'd probably be pretty tight if he knew me. My best friends if they only knew me list. I have a list. I have a list like that now.
I know you talked about it already.
Have I really? We're only 6 episodes in, and I've already started repeating myself.
Who was it who you said? Alfred Molina from Raiders of the Lost Ark is also on the list.
He'd be on that list, yeah. But it would be circa Doc Ock. I'd want to talk about that, and I'd want to talk about, what was he was in Frida.
Yes.
That was a classy film.
Yes.
He's a pretty amazing guy.
And Not Without My Daughter.
I don't know if that's the one. I don't know if that's the one we'd talk about.
Alfred, let's talk about that movie, Not Without My Daughter. You and Sally Field. So good.
Was that the one about the dingo ate my baby?
No, that was Meryl Streep.
That was Meryl Streep.
Circle.
A dingo ate my baby.
Good times.
Those were the days.
Cry in the dark.
All right. What else are we leaving anything out of this? There's one relationship we haven't talked about, which is his British friend, the woman. Yeah. She's kind of I've been trying to figure out the role she serves. I'm having a hard time with that. She's there, and then she's not, and then she's there. And we haven't talked about Bob McKee.
We haven't talked about Bob McKee and Stephen Tobolowsky.
So you can say what you want. I've read the book. I've read Story, but I haven't been to the like $5,000 weekend event, the Story event.
Yeah, I was going to go earlier this fall, and I didn't. I need to go.
So I don't know. Do you have any? Is there anything that we need? Are we going to rate ourselves as just rank amateur if we don't say something really profound about McKee's role in this movie as a turning point, moving the story toward moving the protagonist toward his ultimate destination?
No, it's. I don't think we would rank ourselves as amateur, but I think that it's on the part of Charlie Kaufman. I think it's again, jumping into this self-referential world that, to me, helps make everything okay, what happens in Act 3, by including Robert McKee and having Robert McKee, when he goes off on Charlie Kaufman at the conference in front of the whole auditorium full of people.
Mm-hmm.
About, how his time. I don't know. I haven't seen McKee, and I would happily pay to go to his conference if he really does that when he's talking to people, because it's just crazy. It's so outlandish, but it's a genius way to talk about what makes a good story. And, he's right in many respects. You can't just take whatever book you want and adapt it and turn it into a perfect film that defines, some deep human emotion. That's not what filmmaking is about. That in novels, it works great. And I haven't read the book, The Orchid Thief, that Susan Orlean wrote. I've heard it's a very kind of meandering sort of story that doesn't really have a plot. It's just kind of following her as she does this journeys with the flower guy, John LaRoche. It doesn't sound like something that you can turn into a film. And I don't know if they would have been able to turn it into a film successfully if it wasn't adaptation. Just based on the little I have read about the book, it just sounds like something that's not meant to be a film. And because you have Robert McKee laying it on hard that that's not how you make a movie, why are you wasting my time, and then talking about just wow him in the end, and even his line about but whatever you do, don't you dare bring in a Deus Ex Machina, And then the alligator comes jumping out of the swamp just the next time.
And I love the self-referential commentary on voiceovers. And this movie is full of voiceover.
Yes.
And the closing bit is, this is a voiceover. McKee would hate that.
Yeah.
That's okay. It is what it is.
Yeah. It's so, he throws everything, all the cliches, all the no-nos in writing a script, not just writing a script, but in movie making and just the actual, script writing function itself. He breaks all the cliches and turns them into genius because of the way that he's referring to them. I don't know. And I think by having McKee, it plants that so hard, and it makes it that is the foundation that makes the whole thing work for me.
I agree. I think McKee's service to this script is absolution.
Yeah.
Right. It lets him off the hook for everything that comes after.
Exactly.
Did you get a chance to read the Ebert review from 2002? Did you happen to stumble on that when you were reading?
I didn't, but I did read that he gave it. He said something that leaves you breathless with curiosity as it teases itself with the directions it might take. To watch the film is to be actively involved in the challenge of its creation.
Boy, that's the truth. It's a great review. It's one of I think the world of Roger Ebert. I think he's a terrific writer, and
as do I.
I think that I want to read a passage from this review. I think it's a couple paragraphs. He starts out, the whole first part of the review is talking about just how confusing it is, and he goes into it. I hope you're not confused yet, because the confusing part only starts now. It starts when I enter a room at the Peninsula Hotel in Chicago to interview Nicolas Cage, Spike Jonze, and Charlie Kaufman. There they are, positioned around the coffee table like my parole board. I've been warned that they will not pose for photographs and do not do TV interviews. The publicity for this movie is being handled with all the candor of Putin, explaining what was in the gas. I open with a casual question for Kaufman. Do you really have a twin brother named Donald? The three men jerk visibly. This is obviously the wrong question. Kaufman looks at Cage, Cage looks at Jonze, and Jonze answers. I did not understand what he said, but luckily I had a tape recorder, and so here are his exact words. Well, I just want to, that's the first question, that Donald question, which is something we get a lot, and we don't want to, we're not trying to be deceptive about it or trying to be, like make a trick out of it, but I guess in all earnestness, we want to try and leave it part of the experience of the movie is what, These characters, certain aspects of the movie exist in the real world, and part of it's fiction, and to try to leave that open so people can have that experience going in and seeing the movie without necessarily having it all defined. And so I guess that's sort of, our concern in part about sort of opening that can of worms. In other words, no, Charlie does not have a twin brother named Donald. Even though he shares credit on the screenplay, Adaptation weaves back and forth between reality and fiction so skillfully, however, that if Charlie doesn't have a twin, he might as well.
Bravo.
What a great movie. I'm done. I don't have anything else to say.
I just like to always acknowledge Stephen Tobolowsky every time he's in anything because he's just awesome.
Do it.
And he was in this, even though apparently his scenes got cut out. Although he plays Ranger Neely, one of the Florida Rangers at the whatever the swamp it is, the Frakahatchee. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it, the Frakahatchee Swamp. My apologies to all the Seminole tribes of Florida for my butchering of the swamp name. But yes, he is Ranger Neely. And if you look very carefully in the scene at the very end, as all of the park rangers and police are there dealing with the aftermath of the chase through the swamp and the killing of Donald and all of that, you can see him in the distance, interviewing somebody. I think interviewing Nicolas Cage or something.
Oh my! Stephen Tobolowsky. You know what he was his best role.
Good old Stephen Tobolowsky.
His best role.
Ryerson. Groundhog Day is what I always come back to.
I do, but I also come back to Sneakers.
Who is he in Sneakers?
My voice is my passcode. Authenticate me.
Yes,
he is one of my. Yeah, that is all right. Put that on the list. That goes on the list. Sneakers.
That'll go
one of my all-time favorites.
I haven't seen that in ages, but it was a movie.
Oh, what a great, great movie.
Yeah.
What a great. Okay. All right. What are we going to do next? We're going to take a break. We're taking a holiday break from Kaufman, right? And we're going to step back a little bit.
We're taking a pause, jumping back to an old Michael Curtiz film from '55, a holiday film.
Yeah, it's a perky. It's going to be perky, that film.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have never seen it.
I look forward to it as well. This is the 1955 We're No Angels, the original We're No Angels, Humphrey Bogart and Peter Ustinov, and who's the third one? Aldo Ray.
Aldo Ray, yeah.
Very much looking forward to talking with you about this movie. It's
I'm looking forward to watching it and ringing in the holiday season with our holiday pick for this year.
Absolutely, and then we'll jump back. We'll get back. We've got one more. I think we were going to do one, maybe two more Kaufmans before we.
We were talking about definitely
else.
One, and you mentioned you wanted to throw in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which I'm game for if you want to see that. I know I enjoyed it when I saw it. So.
I do. The more I think about it, the more I think maybe I don't need to see it right now. We could see how we feel after Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That's a heavy movie. But we'll see how we go.
It's a great movie.
It is great.
So good. So good.
I feel like we've earned it.
We have. Charlie Kaufman, kudos to him for coming up with these crazy, crazy films.
Looks like Malcolm Gladwell, that guy. Or maybe I should say Malcolm Gladwell looks like Charlie Kaufman. They're like twins.
I think he looks more like Donald.
You're so meta. It was good talk. Good talk. Are you going to see? Are you going to see anything? Are you going to see anything good this week? Are you
I don't know if I'm going to see anything good this week. Over the Thanksgiving holiday, I did get out with the kids to see Hugo and to see Arthur Christmas.
I caught Arthur Christmas with the kids. I thought that was terrific.
I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic Christmas film. Yeah. Speaking of Christmas films, yeah, it was, it was everything I wanted in a Christmas film. Very uplifting, very Christmas spirit. I just loved it. And it had lots of little funny in-jokes for the parents. I just couldn't get it out.
Can I tell you what bugs me? You know when they do that thing where they have the trailer and they have, they end up taking out lines that they actually use in the trailer, but they cut the line from the final film? When I showed my wife the trailer, one of the reasons my kids and I got her to agree to go see it with us is because of there's a scene where Arthur's on hanging off the sleigh and it's flying, careening across the sky, and he screams, "No child left behind!" And that wasn't in the movie.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in the trailers for that wasn't in the movie. All the playing pranks on polar bears and stuff.
I just great promotion for this movie. It was terrific.
I really enjoyed it.
Well, I will. I'm gonna let you go. I gotta go to bed.
Go to bed. Let's pick up next week with We're No Angels.
All right. Good talk.
Yes, indeed.
Here at The Next Reel, we've been passionately discussing movies week after week since 2011. That's a lot of movies and a lot of conversation.
Sure is, Pete, and to be honest, it's a lot of work too, but it's work that we love. If you have been enjoying our show, we'd like to remind you that there are ways to support us even if you're not able to become a member just yet. You might have heard us talk about our new watch page where we've listed every movie that we've talked about paired with Amazon or Apple links to rent or buy the movie.
Now we'd like to introduce you to our originals page. Let's take a trip down memory lane, Andy. Do you remember what the first film we discussed on The Next Reel was that was an adaptation?
Well, let's see. It wasn't obviously our Indiana Jones series because those were all original. Then we did Charlie Kaufman. Oh, of course. It was Adaptation from Susan Orlean's Orchid Thief.
Exactly. We have covered quite a few adaptations over the years, and now we're providing a way for our listeners to delve into the original source material.
That's right. Just head over to thenextreel.com/originals, and you can see the list of all the adaptations that we have discussed.
From our David Fincher series, featuring The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Social Network, Zodiac, Benjamin Button, and Fight Club.
To our Paranoia trilogy with The Parallax View and All the President's Men, we have covered a variety of adaptations.
Those were some great discussions, especially Fight Club. And let's not forget our baseball series with The Natural and Field of Dreams, adapted from Shoeless Joe.
And Up in the Air and Thank You for Smoking. So many memorable conversations.
Absolutely. And you know what's exciting? Each purchase you make through our links doesn't cost you any extra, but a percentage goes to support The Next Reel and our family of shows.
You can support us while diving deeper into these fantastic stories, whether it's the paper, audiobook, or Kindle version.
We've also included plays and movies. If they were the source, we've put it on there.
So what are you waiting for? Head to thenextreel.com/originals, support The Next Reel, and get your next great read today.
I'm off to reread Fight Club. Now, where did I put my Kindle?